Yes, we will. I think we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of announcements. There's food in the back. Help yourselves to whatever you want. We also have a baseball cap back there with some little slips of paper so you can sign up for a drawing to win a t-shirt. These t-shirts, which I'll explain in a minute, I guess. So go ahead and sign up to win the t-shirt. My name is Marcella Raymond, and I'm actually the new president of the South Dakota State Poetry Society. Thank you. Thanks. Go on. First, we'd like to acknowledge that we're speaking in South Dakota, and we're grateful to be speaking from the traditional lands of the Oceti-Sakowin, or Seven Council Fires Nations, the tribes of the Santee, Dakota, Yankton, Lakota, and Teton Lakota people. The South Dakota State Poetry Society, associated with the National Federation of State Poetry Societies, was founded in 1927. Come on in.
I will be back.
Okay. Our journal, Pask Petals, which you'll find back on the table back there, is published twice a year in the spring and fall. It's the oldest continuously published poetry journal of any state poetry society. So we're really proud of that Pask Petals. The mission of the SDSPS is to foster the creation and appreciation of poetry that appeals to the senses, challenges the imagination, and stimulates creative and intellectual thought. And we're doing that this year and next year by traveling around the state with a project we call Poetry on the Road. We're going to 16 locations throughout the state. And at each of these locations, South Dakota State Poetry Society members will read poetry, and then we'll host an open mic where any of you can sign up to read. We would like to thank our generous sponsors, the South Dakota Humanities Council, and all of the venues across the state who've donated space for these events, including the folks at Oglala Lakota College. And I'd also like to thank my friend Nikki and Emily for providing us with this amazing buffet in the back. So yeah, let's give it up for them, because wow. We hope you'll take some time to visit our table. The South Dakota State Poetry Society, in addition to publishing Pask Petals, we also hold a chapbook contest every year and publish the winning chapbook. Chapbooks are just small books of poetry, usually with a thread or a theme that holds the poems together. So usually 20 to 24 poems-ish. And we also hold poetry contests each year. So each year we have a contest for individual poems in a landscape category and a portrait category. And those contests are both open right now to anybody who wants to submit a poem for those contests. And you can go to sdpoetry.org and find out how to submit. We also hold a youth poetry contest each year for middle and high school students. And again, we have some information on the back table about the Louise Schaefer, did I say that right? Louise Schaefer Youth Poetry Contest. So you're welcome to take that information with you, or go to sdpoetry.org and find out more. Come on in. Yay. So we're going to switch things up a little bit. We have some featured readers, but we're going to have some student open mic readers first because they're kind of on a time crunch. So when you come up to the mic to read, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and then read whatever you would like. I should also mention that we're going to be on Zoom and that this is being recorded for YouTube, so scary for me. So it looks like Maggie is up first, and if you would give Maggie a hand to get her up here.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Okay, first of all, I'm really excited to be here. And I am part of the Poetry Society, and it's good to see the Poetry Society here in Kyle. It's kind of exciting. And I've been teaching at Little Wound School for about 27 years. I see one of my former students here. I'm glad to see Sawi. And I got another former student here. She's not going to read, I don't think, but one of the young ladies is going to read her poetry. And she's doing all poetry by Lily Shue as for oral interpretation. And she got first place in the first meet that we had this year doing that poetry. So it's very powerful. My assistant coach is here, and she's also going to read poetry, and she was published in this edition of Past Petals, so I'm glad to have her here as well. And I had a young lady, I'm going to read two poems. First, I thought Sweetgrass Janice was going to be here, but I don't know, something come up, she didn't make it. But she's doing a series of poems on sea creatures. And so she's doing like the chambered nautilus and the Maldive shark and stuff like that. And I thought, well, you know what? I just got this poem published called Whale 22. And it's in, and I also wrote Green Elephant and took this picture, so I'm actually kind of proud of this thing. But it's a Scurfy publication. But I never knew that poem would sound so beautiful as when I heard her read it for the first time. And so she was supposed to be here to read it, so I'm going to read it for her. And then I'm going to read a poem, another poem, and then I think by then my students will be ready to rock and roll. So, Whale 52. The lonely whale had a beautiful voice. Like no other whale in the vast Pacific, its calls were never answered. No 52 hertz call echoed in return. It swam the same waters as the great blue and the bowfin, but their calls were less melodious and of a lower frequency. She was the soprano of whales. With an operatic voice for cetaceans, none other could ever match her pitch. Who knows how many times she may have circled the globe, searching for another like her. Just how old might she be? Bowhead whales are thought capable of living over 250 years. Is she the last of her kind? How long has she wandered? Did she know Poseidon's son, Triton? Did she drift the realm of the Aegea? Who can say? All we really know is that modern man has heard but one whale with a voice like hers. All she can do is search and listen for another voice, 52 hertz from somewhere beneath the depths of the sea. And she searches and she sings. And the next poem, some of my students, a few people might have heard this, this is not many people have heard this poem yet. It's called Night of the Eclipse. I tried, Dan. I really did. But my time has come. It has been appointed unto all men once to die. The same holds true for dogs too. I hear you calling my name, Dan. And I almost bark because I can hear the fear and sadness in your heart as you cry out, "Nightly, Nightly, buddy, where are you?" I want to bark and let you know, but I'm weak and ready to go. You know, the doctors only gave me 3 months to live, even after the amputation. But we beat the odds and shared over 19 more months together. And I thank you, Dan, for all the things I got to do during that time with my 2 closest friends. You and Tori made my life a wonderful thing to have. I really didn't miss that leg, and you were patient with me. You took me to Yellowstone and tumbled me off of my seat when a grizzly bear walked in front of the vehicle. You took me to Forks, Washington, where I dreamed of chasing vampires and killing werewolves. To voyage on the Pacific looking for whales terrified me. I don't have sea legs, and I definitely am a landlubber tripod. But your sister Karen let me lie at her feet, reassuring me as you stood at the boat's edge on a choppy ocean looking for Moby or some other leviathan surfacing the cresting sea. You took me to Silver City, Idaho, a mountain ghost town, and ate several slices of their various famous pies. I still like pie. I visited your major professor who invited me in on equal terms. I listened to you two reminiscing about bygone days, chasing lizards, banding birds, and catching kangaroo rats. You took me north of Allen, where I got to explore the North American pole of greatest inaccessibility. You took me to places few dogs have ever gone before. And now we are at your ranch. You have fence to fix and expect me to follow along. Even with just 3 legs, chasing you is so much fun. But I'm not feeling well, and your ranch is my favorite place. And I want to stay here, Dan. I will miss you, and Tori too. But most of all, I know you love me, and I love you too. I want to bark. I want you to hold me. I want to spend more time with you. Please tell Tori I love her, not to cry too much, and tell her thank you for taking me on walks. I will miss her oh so much. I have found my spot. I know you are searching. My heart is aching. It wants to explode. The sky is dark, and I sense something is gnawing on the moon. I see a dozen stars streaking across the darkling sky, blazing brightly before burning out. And I identify with those dying stars. My once glowing light is fading too, and I whimper softly. And I cry, knowing I'll never again feel your thick fingers running gently through my hair, or be able to share your bed on a cold wintry night. And I love you, Dan. I truly do. I truly do. I truly do. And I love you. And I love you. And I cry. But I can no longer stay on this plane. The cancer has returned. And I hear the stars beckoning me homeward. So I must leave. I know it's true. Why else would some celestial entity be eating the moon? Thank you. Okay, so Magaju Witt is next. She's a junior in high school. She's doing a series of nonsense poems for poetry. So I wanted her to share some of the nonsense poems. These are not written by her, they're mainly famous.
The Duck and the Kangaroo by Edward Lear. Said the duck to the kangaroo, "Good gracious, how you hop over the fields and the water too, as if you never would stop. My life is a bore in this nasty pond, and I long to go out in the world beyond. I wish I could hop like you," said the duck to the kangaroo. "Please, give me a ride on your back," said the duck to the kangaroo. "I would sit quite still and say nothing but quack the whole of the long day through, and we'd go to the Dee and the Jelly Belly, over the land and over the sea. Please take me a ride, oh do," said the duck to the kangaroo. Said the kangaroo, "I'm ready, all in the moonlight pale. But to balance me well, dear duck, sit steady, and quite at the end of my tail." So away they went with a hop and a bound, and they hopped the whole world 3 times round. And who's so happy, oh who, as the duck and the kangaroo? Said the kangaroo to the duck. This requires some reflection. Perhaps on the whole it might bring me luck. And there seems but one objection, which is, if you let me speak so bold, your feet are unpleasantly wet and cold, and would probably give me the rheumatiz, said the kangaroo. Said the duck, "As I say on rocks, I have thought over that completely, and I bought 4 pairs of worsted stocks, which fit my web neatly. And to keep out the cold, I've bought a cloak, and every day a cigarette I'll smoke, all to follow my own dear true love of a kangaroo." I'll do that.
So Nicholas Yellowboy, he's a sophomore. Last year he did poetry, he advanced the state in poetry, World Clerk, he got superior. He also advanced to the state poetry out loud.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Yellowboy, and I am doing Edgar Allan Poe, The Bells. I hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight. Keeping time in sort of a runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight from the molten golden notes. And in tune, what a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony, while luminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarm bells, brazen bells. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells, and the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright. Too much horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek out of tune. And in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, and a mad exploitation with a deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavor. Now, to sit or never by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, bells of bells, bells, what a tale their terror tells of despair. How they clang and clash and roar, what a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear, it fully knows, by the twinging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells, in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking or the swelling in the air of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 and the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monotony compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan, and the people, the people, they that dwell up in the steeple all alone, and who tolling, 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 in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls. And their king it is who tolls, and he rolls, 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 a paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, time, time in sort of a runic rhyme to the paean of the bells, keeping time, time, time in sort of a runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, time as he knells, knells, knells in a happy runic rhyme, to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells.
So I will help you. This is Ava Youngbear, and she's going to be poetry by Lily Shue.
This piece is called Unrequited by Lily Shue. With just a few words, I was completely shattered. Then I met you. Wonderful, lovely you. Somewhere in the midst of our midnight talks, I found someone that resembled who I used to be. You were absolutely magnificent. I was hopelessly infatuated. What a dumb girl I was, waiting around for my knight in shining armor like a useless princess. I loved you. But you made me weak. My happiness and stability were dependent upon you. I was drowning in my ocean of emotions. I needed a life preserver, but you tossed me an anchor instead. I loved you anyway. You silenced the screaming in my mind, but your love was never mine. You already made it clear that your heart was off limits, being irreparably broken yourself. You were everything to me. I think you loved me too, but not the way I needed.
Jenny?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I was like, Ginny or Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny Egan. I've lived here on the reservation for about 27 years, and I've been a teacher over at Little One this is my 10th year. And this is the first time I was ever published. I put it under a pseudonym because it's a real sensitive nature, but here it goes, getting out there now. The Love Bomb. She is an angel in a woman's suit. His attention was intense. The Redbird earrings, a birthday show. The You Come With Me Wherever I Go. The magic of the universe belongs to us. My heart fooled, completely crushed. Being empathetic and needy, hapless and easy to get, I was the perfect target. I did not know how he wanted my soul. He waited until he had me completely exposed. He captured my reasoning and made me believe that we both would die if I would ever leave. The gaslight effect. Brainwashed, loss of self. I do not remember the first time he hit me, but the first time he punched my face, my nose profusely bled. I asked him later if he was bothered to see my blood like that. He said, "The nose has many vessels, and it bleeds easily." Love rush, blood gush, head down, no sound. You're a liar, you're a whore. Your fault, your choice. Prison with no bars. How did it get this far? Melting over words, falling for acts that hold and bind, capture the mind. No going back, no getting out. A simmered frog, unlifting brain fog. Fear, 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 torture ever near. Something always flipping the switch. Heavy-handed bedevilments. No one knows the true extent. Petulance and jealousy. Domestic violence elegy. And then, because I don't want to leave you with that, a poem that I wrote earlier in my life called Mountain Cry. Hopefully I'll remember it. Screaming in search of an answer from this world, but a woebegone echo is all I hear, for there is no one to scream back. And yelling at the top of my lungs like a ponderosa pine, I point to the sky and scream and yell, "I'm here, I'm right here." And yowling with the lonely coyotes, I lose myself in Sister Moon's sunshine. But if I'm quiet and my head calms down, I can hear the plants and the bugs. And they told me that when a tree falls down in the forest, it makes a sound as real as my mountain cry. Thank you.
Here. First of all, we have a sign up. Is anybody else who had not signed up would like to read here? Because this is what it's all about, is for people to get up and to be heard. And so anybody else?
You can put me down Virginia Town if you want.
Okay.
I'm on Zoom though.
I should mention this. I didn't publicly read until I was over 50 years old. Oh yeah, back in high school, I think I did maybe once or twice oral and terp or whatever. But the first time I ever read, because I wrote a book. And it made a few waves, so I thought I should just try to sell it. But there were very few places at that time. This is the early 2000s. And there was a place down in Sioux Falls called the Horse Barn, where local poets read once a month. So I went down there and I got up to read, and I found that I wasn't sure, if I was going to be able to read because my hands were shaking so bad. Well, I got through that. And that's kind of what I learned, is that the next time was a little bit easier, and the next time was a little bit easier. But not that I do anything perfect. And that's the whole thing. We never do anything perfect. We just go out there and try to do our best. And that's all you ever can do. I should tell you a little bit about myself. I am the 8th Poet Laureate of South Dakota. Badger Clark was the first one. He was a cowboy poet. In fact, this year they've done a documentary on him, and he basically started up the whole thing, cowboy poetry. What I do is called free verse, and it's grounded. Usually I write about things that are concrete, that you see in your everyday life. Not that I don't always not write something a little more abstract. I am fourth generation of a farmer rancher. I live halfway between Aberdeen and Pierre, though I'm semi-retired. I have a house in Spearfish. And so it works out good for me, this poetry on the road, because, basically I could be either in East Side or the West Side here, and I'm 3.5 hours, 4 hours from any corner of the state. And I think that's really great. I've had some people say, well, you live in the middle of nowhere, and I feel like I live in the middle of everywhere, I did a little bit of writing when I was in high school. And I did a little bit of writing when I was in college. I went and got a degree. Wasn't very serious about it. I kind of quit writing for 20-some years because I didn't thought I had anything to say. But I came back to the farm. I decided I got a degree, but I didn't want to have an office job. And my dad wanted me to come back to the farm and ranch. I was the only son, so I came back. And it was in the 80s, and farming and ranching back then, during the 1980s, were really bad. And people were struggling really hard to stay on the land. It was basically a depression. A lot of people lost their farms, their ranches. And I had to think over the time, why were people wanting to stay so hard on the land? And that's what got me writing in the early 2000s, because I thought, like I said, I live on the original homestead. My great-grandfather is there. He wrote very little. And very little is written about our family history, about the history of that area, which in my case was the north central South Dakota. And I thought, well, I could do that. And I found that what I was writing was free verse poetry, because I'd write 5-6 pages and I wasn't satisfied with it. I'd throw out all the unnecessary things and I would end up with a page. After doing that for a couple of years, my wife set my stuff off and I ended up getting published. And I won a national award. Altogether, I've won 4 national awards. And I'll tell you how you go about doing that. You don't think about it. What you do is you write about things that strike you, things that you want to remember. A poet, a writer, is no different than a photographer, a painter, somebody who is making film, because they look through the world with that eye, with that ear. To me, the world is poetry. And things happen, they come into my head, and I go, I want to record this. I want to put it down. So that's all I did. And I'd write something, and I'd work on it a little bit, maybe read it to somebody, work on it a little bit. That's called revision. And then when I thought it was about as good as I could get it, I would just put it in a file. And after every so many years, I took a look at it and see if I had a theme in there and put it together in a book, and that's it. That's how you do it. It's just accumulation over a period of lifetime. The wonderful thing about poetry, you can do it in 15 minutes in the in-between cracks of your life. Somebody writing a novel, they think, well, we've got to have a beginning, got to have an end, got to have a couple hundred pages. Well, you don't have to do that with a poem. Something happens in your life, you know, an event, and you want to record it. So you do it. The reason why I started writing is I was in my early 50s. I started writing for my grandchildren. I did not have any grandchildren then, but I wanted them to know what it was like to live in my times and place. Because my great-grandfather, he didn't leave anything. And I thought that would have been just really something to have known what a day in his life had been like. To tell me the what, to tell me the why. Tell me about a day in his life. So that's what I started doing. Writing to that future 20 years from now. You can go ahead and write for your future self 20 years from today. You know, you can, if you're in your 20s, you're in your teens, right now, you don't have to write a lot. Right now, put it away, whatever. 20 years from now, you can look back at it and you go, oh, so that's what I was like when I was in this age. Or, better yet, hand it to your grandchildren. You know, that's who we write for. We write for the future. Poetry, I think, is a really good way to go ahead and communicate with other people, to communicate to yourself, to share what you value in life. It's that connection. And that's what everything is about, is connecting with other people, because that's how we progress forward. That's how that arc of history bends forward into a little more light, is when we get to understand how other people feel, how they see, walk in their shoes. And it's a wonderful thing. And a poem is something you can do. Somebody may not sit down there and listen or read a book, but they go ahead and will listen to your 4 or 5 minutes of poetry. A poem. A poem is nothing more than a story. So that's what I want to hear. That's what I'd like to see in my 4 years is what I get. That's the term of being poet laureate. My term runs out June 30th, 2027, which, by the way, will be the 100th birthday of the South Dakota State Poetry Society. And I will probably look about 100 years old by then. Well, enough of this. I will read some poems. I'm still an active farmer rancher, and I don't know, you got red foxes around here? You do? Oh, I love red foxes. Coyotes, you know, I'm a rancher, so coyotes are kind of suspicious. They never bothered my cattle, but I got homegrown foxes. They come in every year during my calving season. They put their dens right in the middle of my calving yards because the cows drive the the coyotes away, so they feel safe. So I got foxes running around in the spring. I think it's neat. I think red foxes are neat. So this is Red Fox. Red Fox, you are like my tame dog. I see you frequently busy, looking for grubs and mice in the odd, weedy places close to my cattle yards. The coyotes that live further out would kill you if they had the chance. The wide, vacant spaces are theirs. I don't shoot at you or set a trap. You don't harm my cows, and you keep the mice down. You don't bother me, and I don't bother you. It seems to me a good bargain. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story called Just Another Day at the Ranch. The calf was being presented upside down and backward. Experienced vets say, rotate. Easier said than done. If you try pulling calves out the wrong way, they just don't come. I pushed the legs back into the womb, twisting and turning, trying to get what was wrong back to right. Finally, the legs pointed the right way for a wrong way breech calf. A hard pull from the get-go. The cow went down. As I pulled the calf through the birth canal, I heard and felt something snap. Dead on delivery, big one at that. I should have done better. But another cow had just had a set of twins. I'd split them. Give this cow a second chance. Picking up my stuff, I threw the puller over the gate. Somehow, in the toss, my left index finger got ripped up. Bleeding bad, I stuck my hand under a cold running hydrant in the barn. Crouching down, cold water running over a hurting finger. A cow dead in the head gate, a dead calf on the straw. I could only hope no neighbor, friend, or stranger would show up. Nothing I wanted to explain or discuss. I wrapped up my finger, dragged the dead out of the barn, got the cow up and out of the head gate, pinned her up with the foster calf, had my supper, went to bed. Next day, the mother and calf walked out together like they were meant for each other. So, turned out good. One of the things that I think, you would really miss if you live elsewhere in a crowded area, or maybe in more mountains or trees or tall buildings, is seeing the night sky. And that's something we got out here, that half of the earth of the sky. And I really have loved looking up at the stars, and my favorite thing is a full moon. So this poem is called Moonshine. There's always something mystical about a sky lighted by moonshine. Stars are present, but gentler. Clouds floating across the night sky are translucent white. The moonlighted earth can be traveled about without need of any additional light. I have stood in the middle of my yard and read a newspaper by moonshine. When was it that we became afraid of the dark like death, hiding in our cities of light? In doing so, we have lost that half of the night that is moonshine. With the full moon upon the countryside, it's easy to imagine walking out, striding over the land, disappearing into the shadows to find the mystery that you know has always been on the very edge of your life. Find a road, follow the moonshine. So like I said, I have, well, a little over 3.5 years, and I hope to get around, and I take my ambassadorship, that's how I feel it, an ambassadorship of being a poet laureate to encourage other people to write, to talk to each other, to get up and present it, share. So, celebrate. We want to know. Sing to me of South Dakota. Tell it. Like Carl Sandburg did about Chicago's Big Shoulder. Tell me about the workers of infinite variety within this state. How goes their day? Tell me the what. Tell me the why. Tell me about a day in your life. Did spring creep up on you one fine morning on cat's feet as you beheld your first crocus with the snow of winter barely gone? Who has not had a night of this dark soul that broke on through to the other side? Did you light your candle on both ends with a flame oh so bright? Now, years later, are you ever more wise? Have you climbed the former Harney's Peak and from that vantage point seen 5 states? Standing on the dome, did you hear Black Elk speak? Were the words whispered? Did they roar? Tell me. Tell me if Sioux Falls is the best little city on a summer's Friday evening air, as the young and restless, arm in arm, slow dance down the sculpture walk on Phillip Avenue. Tell me about the endless prairie, quarter section, row cropped and drilled. Tell me of short grass, cattle, small town bars, blue sky and red-tailed hawks, until you reach the distant hills. Then, sing to me of rapid cities, Main Street Square popping to the sounds of music, mingling with the sunset colors rainbowing from the pulsing water's fountain spray. Sing me all of South Dakota. Sing me your life, for the good of poetry is the celebrating, the telling of the golden age of we. All that is blessed, all that is struggle, tell me your heart. Sing of yourself. Sing South Dakota. I want to hear the voices of angels. I want to hear Walt Whitman's barbaric yelps singing through you. Thank you. Well, let's get the next one up.
Hi, first a commercial break. There's a sign up back there. Please sign and fold your paper in half and put it in the Poet Laureate's hat. You always draw from a hat, right? There's a t-shirt and book giveaway. I am Jean Helmer. I am chairman of the Youth Poetry Contest, and we just happen to have information for you. This is for high school and middle school students. Entry is free. It's easy, and there are some cash prizes. So see me, see Mr. Sneathen, see any of us afterwards. I write for a variety of reasons, mainly to get things out of my head, or because sometimes it's preferable to use a sense of humor instead of profanity. And people who ignore science irritate me. This Turns out I've often asked, how do you get stuff published? I'm almost 76 and I cracked the code. It turns out you actually have to submit things. And when you do, they get published every now and again. And I have the delight to be in this book with Dan Sneathen and Bruce Roseland and Marcella Redman. And who else? Is there somebody else here that's in this? Yeah. Okay, this is called There's Something Fishy Going On and It Bugs Me. Gender is either male or female, just the way God planned it, I huffed. It's sinful to go messing with it. Meanwhile, in the pond nearby, bass, triggered by primordial DNA, transgender to guarantee the survival of their species. In the surrounding vegetation, grasshoppers who escaped the wet early spring and last year's pesticides have become self-fertile, laying thousands of eggs. Their next generation, they will return to being heterosexual. Left mystified, I wonder, is this evidence of divine wisdom? Is this testimony that the Creator laughs at my certitude? Or is it proof that I need to reread Psalm 135, verse 6, which says, God says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Sometimes there's a book that you wish you would have written, or a style, and Sycorate was the winner of the chapbook contest a while back. And Sycorate is an old word that means to tame or to reclaim from wildness or madness. My first career was teaching high school English, drama, even some history, those sorts of things. And as part of that, I often was called on to write letters of recommendation to get my kids into the military. When the Gulf War hit, 33 of my babies were in the desert. And when they would come home, we would go for walks, and I know they tamed things. Whitney Thorpe wrote this, and these are all found poems, and she has taken these from documents, from newspaper clippings, from books and interviews, and they are the voices of people who have served. And it's a form of found poetry that fascinates me, and I want to play with it. Found words of President George W. Bush, and in the back of this, she gives a bibliography for where you can go and find the whole thing. September 4th, 2002, following a meeting with congressional leaders. I will first remind the United Nations that for 11 long years, Saddam Hussein has sidestepped, crawfished, wheedled out of any agreement he had made not to harbor, not to develop weapons of mass destruction, agreements he's made to treat people within his country with respect. And so I'm going to call upon the world to recognize that he is stiffing the world, and I will lay out and I will talk about ways to make sure he fulfills his obligations. And then found words of an unknown veteran suffering from PTSD. All men who go to war die, kid. Anybody who comes back, well, they come back cheated. In a poorly lit bunker that stunk of smoke, strong alcohol, and vomit, that was something that one of the hardened GIs said to me the first night I was deployed. It stuck with me all of these years. War, I believe, dare not be commented on by those who have yet to experience it. Until you kill other human beings for survival, what could you possibly say about it? It assaults all your senses, the smell of death and the machines that cause it, noises so loud you feel like an ant under a lawnmower. It is incomprehensible. And during my deployment, children, women, teenagers, and men all alike met an indiscriminate end at my hand. On my best days, I tell myself I killed to survive. On my worst, my mind tells me I committed acts of madness so I didn't go mad. Although I came back, I never escaped. I may have cheated death, but just like that Joe prophetically said in the smoke-fueled haze all those years ago, life has cheated me. And it goes on. What a cool way this would be to do a term paper. Just saying.
Kim, is that our Wendy Thorpe?
Pardon? Yes. She's from here?
She taught us here.
Wow.
She's my address.
Neat.
She just had a
Wow. That is one of the most powerful books I have picked up in a long, long time. It's back there someplace for sale.
She's also now on the board of Southwest State.
Oh, I didn't even realize that yet. I've got to make some connections. Great. I write to stop repetitive thoughts sometime. I have to write things out of my system. That first career, I taught high school for 30 years, and then a second career as pastor and back and forth. This poem took me a long time to write because Steve, one of my high school students, was also one of my other kids. You know how it is. It's called Diving into Grief. And to understand this, one thing you need to know is if you are a scuba diver, to enter the water, you sit on the edge of a boat with your back towards the water and you somersault off backwards. If you go frontwards, you're going to come up under the boat and you got big problems. So you have to somersault and tip backwards and commit yourself into the water. Diving into Grief, or Remembering Steve. My left brain reels at the suggestion of diving back into the dark memories of January. My right brain insists, knows I cannot go forward until I have entered Grendel's cave of grief, faced the monster of death by suicide. For 6 months, I have refused to acknowledge the reality, refused to think, refused to feel. I steel myself to drop backwards into memory's abyss, to sink through the darkness of sorrow. I know it will take me to the cemetery, to January's mud, quick frozen with questions, to the man double tapping a one-knuckle farewell onto the gray coffin holding his brother. My left brain staggers, unwilling to delve into the brackish waters, unwilling to stir the sledge of memories, unwilling to let me write, think, or feel. My right brain instructs, take a long, deep breath, hold it, tumble backwards into the dark waters, yield to the blackness, sink to the bottom, land feet first to escape disorientation. I sink through the funeral to the visits from his classmates, bringing questions to their old English teacher. They ask, he was more than a student, wasn't he? He talked to you a lot, didn't he? It was kind of like he was your kid, wasn't it? I analyze. I could have returned his calls from the bar. I should have recognized the difference between drunk and depressed. If I would have, only by confronting the reality will I begin to heal. I take a long, deep breath, hold it, and tumble backwards. Some teachers are unduly influenced by their students. In 1992, roughly, there had been a movie out, Dead Poets Society. Are you familiar with that? Where high school kids convinced the teacher it'd be a good idea to go to a secret location and read poetry by candlelight. Secretly. This is called Under Movies Influence, 1992. Kathleen Norris reads best at a Poet Society meeting held in an unused sheep shed on a rainy spring night by teens who illuminated her words with board-bound candles, while in the darkness of the surrounding corral, 10,000 pounds of nervous and previously unnoticed Angus bulls stamped and snorted punctuation. That's a great writing prompt for next time when they will remember to check the gates. Marcella's next.
Oops. Thank you. I just have a few short poems. I usually write short poems because, as one of my poetry teachers said, I'm a lazy poet. And this first one is called Brush Fires. It's a newer poem, and I guess it's a poem about feeling like the whole world is on fire and everything's wrong. And how do we keep moving forward through that? So, brush fires. Nights when the world jumps the line, when cries or guns ring through my sleep, when earth heaves and groans in her decline, when our bed becomes a lake of fire, I wake to find you. As if you were water on flames, as if you, a plaster of arnica and nettle, could soothe my pain. I pull you to me, and this burning in my lungs softens, my next breath long and sweet. Face to your face, I watch you wake in a sweat, your mouth a gasping O. Flames licking at the back of your throat. At times we seem so lost, cut loose from hope. But rest, beloved. The fire is dying down in morning's rain. Let's throw off our blankets, safe in the cool ash of this moment, in this world where we were never meant to stay. Thank you. When I was really way too young, I had a stroke. It was kind of a surprise. You know, if something like that happens, it's kind of hard to pull yourself back. And I had a draggy foot, and one eye didn't work for quite a long time, and I was just feeling a little bit like a monster, I guess. So, but I also have 4 dogs, and there's nothing like dogs to kind of keep you in check. So this is a poem about one of my dogs right after I had the stroke. And it's called What the Dogs Know. Pedro weighs 10 pounds. He sleeps on his back, tucked in my left armpit, paws folded in air as if he's begging Sky Dog for one more biscuit. He flashes tender pink skin, bare where black fur meets soft underbelly, stick-thin bones I could disarticulate like chicken wings, a body stretched in sleep that I could crush with one careless roll. Dear Lord, he knows how massive, how clumsy, how monstrous I am now. But he dreams on, eyes shut tight, sometimes sighing in ecstatic comfort, sometimes snoring, sometimes running upside down in a dream of slow squirrels. He could care less about my wilted brain, clunky foot, droopy eye, missing sense of balance. Do you understand what this means? This miracle of trust? It means for all we abhor in ourselves, for all we criticize and condemn, dogs know the bright nugget in us. Even asleep, they feel it shining, glowing, worthy of love. This next poem, if I can find it, is I was lucky enough to camp up on O'Neill Pass, kind of above Spearfish Canyon. And it occurred to me while I was camping up there that was my idea of church, being up there. And so this poem is called Vespers. And Vespers is like the old Catholic term for evening prayers. So Vespers, O'Neill Pass, Black Hills, South Dakota. The sun, luminous host of burnt orange, golden rose, falls early into the open mouth of the Black Hills. In shadow, elk drink from a limestone sinkhole, verdigris cup still running over with Tuesday's sudden rain. Bats wake, slip from pines, left standing or planed into cabin eaves. Wings flutter like paper fans in summer church. Dakota skippers take one last blessing from harebell or Mariposa lily. White-tailed doe coaxes a fawn up an aisle of timothy grass to the sanctuary of ponderosa pine. Quaking aspen, dark settles in, stars blink on in the black July sky, and then the singing. Invisible coyote choir at the tree line, tremulous songs of love, fear, want. Oh, the candles are lit, hymns echo in thin, cool air. The priest is everywhere. My heart splits like a wafer, each caught breath, my offering on this plate of limestone, and I am on my knees. Thank you so much. Okay, and then because Lindsay Stevens is listening, I have to read one more poem for Lindsay. And this is a poem about feeling like you're just getting way too civilized and you maybe need to be a little wilder. So this is called Wild Blue Yonder. Everyone knows the West begins at Kadoka, South Dakota, where you pull your Volvo into the only gas station, where you end up buying a Hunter Orange Big Cock Country seed cap, lone strutting pheasant embroidered on the brim because it will crack up the folks back home. At Wall Drug, mounted jackalopes send fingers of consumer nostalgia up your spine, but you get back on the road. West of the Badlands, you turn ma'am or missy and tumbleweeds from a cheesy 1950s Western finally make it to I-90. They roll toward Mott, North Dakota, where they'll sit a spell. Skeletal pom-poms, fish hooked on barbed wire. You keep going west, and in the northern Black Hills, things get full-on wild. You turn all Bobcat Mountain Girl, climbing Black Elk Peak with tobacco ties between your teeth, a buck knife in your boot. Did I mention you wear boots now? The hills spit you out in Wyoming, where you make breeches out of antelope hide, start fires with twigs and sinew, hunt jackrabbits and wild plums. There's a hitch in your step now, which makes you veer off. Somewhere north of I-15, Cut Bank, Montana, let's say, you give up speaking. You strip wires and leather from your Volvo, drive the car into Cut Bank Creek. You live in a lean-to made of Russian willow and Volvo leather. You plaster chewed arnica flowers and river mud on a bee sting. You grow a thick white braid overnight, so by morning it goes all the way down your back. Your bracelets are prairie dog teeth strung on radio wire. You can't remember your name. In a day or a decade, you'll head west again, follow the smell of salt water. back in Sioux Falls, street lights, headlights, blue TV lights blink on like eyes about to cry. Thank you very much.
Oh, but Taste on Me is on there too.
Taste on Me is next.
Let's do her and then Jimmy.
Was it? Hi. So my name is. Hi. Acknowledge y'all on here. My name is Ptasami Rose Little White Man. I'm a spoken word poet, and I'm an Oglala Lakota writer. I don't know why I said that backwards. My bad. I'm gonna be reading a couple poems for y'all. Two of which are, one is published in the Tribal College Journal, so you can find that on their website. And the other one is, I performed this other one at the Kennedy Center last summer. So you can find that on YouTube. It's We the People's Before stage production. So yeah. I don't know if I'm missing anything. I'm a student here as well. I'm getting my associate's degree in graphic design next summer, or this coming spring, and then I'm working on my bachelor's in leadership and communications. This first poem I wrote when I was going on a staff retreat, and I needed something to show them who I was. I don't know what it was about, but they needed something to show them who I was, and I decided as a poet I would write a poem about it. So this is, I guess, a poem about me. At first glance, you'd spot a wave of blue, and the sound the current makes when the ocean tide takes a step back for the trees to breathe. The tree roots are where my stories explore, and they explored the river streams and made friends with the four-legged and the winged. My stories sit with the chokecherry and plum bushes, listening to their songs about the rain. They laugh with gratitude for the clouds, and the clouds remind me of the ocean tide. Although salty waters are foreign to me, the sand finds its way to my feet, and the ocean leaves kisses on my cheek. My stories leave footprints in the Great Plains with the Pte Oyate. They reminisce on the battles I've lived through and how I've learned the names of the shadows in the night. At first glance, I'd hope my presence is warm, like the sun on a partially cloudy day, or calming and ethereal like the smell of rain. My stories are quiet and loud, depending on which path you travel down. You will laugh and you will cry. You'll learn how the shadows and I first met and how long it's taken for us to be friends. My stories exist not just in words, but in memories. If you listen not with your ears, but with your heart, you can hear the prayers of my ancestors and the beating of the drums and the thunder and wind. My stories are still being written. They have yet to explore the trenches and the gardens where the berries of my planted dreams grow. I hope my spirit dances with the stars when my time comes. Until then, my stories will grow with the planted hopes and dreams. I'll have so much to reflect on in this life as I lay to rest in the Milky Way, and I hope the sea remembers me. Thank you. This next poem I wrote, I guess it's a trigger warning, because so in the presence of the poet laureate, I was also saying, how do I become the 9th poet laureate? Because I like poetry a lot, and I mean, I feel like I don't know. But anyway, while you were going on about why you write poetry and stuff, it made me think about why I write. And as a poet, I started writing as a way to help me cope. Dan Sneeden knows this. I would like to see him as a poet coach, just because he's helped me prolong my poetry and allowed me to perform at things such as the Poetry Out Loud, South Dakota Poetry Out Loud in 2017. So a lot of my poetry has to do with my mental health, and very recently had it started to become more of environmental, racial, and social justice related, and indigenous resiliency. So this poem I wrote is kind of heavy. So if you have struggles with self-harm in any way, just be warned that this poem I wrote is because it's kind of deep for me. So just bear with me, because I want to be vulnerable and raw with you guys. I want to talk about self-harm addiction and how frustration is a lot to swallow when you're cradling your knees in bed, wondering how you can silence the screaming inside your head. I want to talk about the tingles. They creep up your arms like maggots on a decomposed limb, only they are not eating into your skin. Instead, they are searching for an escape. I want to talk about the thoughts you have when everything feels okay. When the light peeking behind the blinds is like a soft kiss on your cheek, but your thoughts, they're cryptic. Almost like intrusive decisions. You don't want to hurt yourself, yet this part of you asks politely. Not enough to scar, only enough to sting. But you don't see how I see the ways this gentle blade can make the clawing plea go away, and the endless nights where my pillowcases are left drenched from salty streams and blood lost in the trenches, my skin stopped bleeding. It wasn't enough to scar, only enough to sting. Okay, sorry, I wanted to get that out of the way, because they can be heavy pieces. So this next poem is in the Tribal College Journal on the website. So you can find it there as well if you want to look at it and read it and all that stuff and all that jazz. It's called Be the Muse for Once. And I wrote this when I was attending a poetry reading with my fellow poet, Kinzel Drake, and who is also an amazing Dene poet. Y'all should check her out as well. But yeah, so I wrote this because I was watching them read their poetry, and I was just like, wow. Anyway, so. Have you ever noticed the way your fingers fidget between lined journal paper? And do you know about the glow you radiate before you perform a piece? Does the excitement begin when you're writing a poem, or when your palms meet mic and stand, and is it scary? The excitement. Is it exhausting being a poet, to find the caramel in a traumatic moment, and to find a purpose in the mundane? I know the burdens of carrying an anchor in a dried up sea, and trying to find the blooming roses in the caves of forgotten dreams. The ache to have a poem written about you, for you, creeps in the walls and sleeps in the attics of our homes, and we're left to wonder if it's shy or here to haunt us. We are the poets, the hopeless romantics. We are the romanticized lovers who write about our partner's perfect imperfections, or how the trees smile when we sing to ourselves on an afternoon stroll. But no one talks about the sack, about the bones in the sack on a rack in the back rooms, of wondering what it's like to be the topic of a poem. What a thrill it would be to have a poem dedicated for you. I want to know how the ocean carefully carries seashells to the seashores, so that my feet can stumble upon them and my fingers can caress the edges of a metaphorical seashell of your wildest desires. The wondrous curiosity of what you think the autumn skies whisper about when my back is turned, and if the leaves blush when they turn red. This poem is for the poets who forget to breathe when writing stanzas of a moment so precious an image would taint. This is for the ones who stare at the night sky while the stars swim in the abyss of their pupils. The ones who keep their favorite poems in a box with a lock under their bed so that they'd feel the security of having it read. I want to taste the burdens from the tears and sweat that pours out as you finish that final line. Make my way into your arms so that I could embrace your collapse. I know what it's like to only have the comfort of a pen and paper, a laptop keyboard clicking, and a thesaurus to try and find the right word for what you're feeling. Let me help you find shelter between the similes and metaphors, because maybe for once we can breathe. We can build a garden of our favorite fruits from the labors we endured, make jelly sandwiches with the dandelions, and I have a question for you. How does it feel to be the topic of a poem? Okay, and then this one is called A Love Letter to the Land. I was at this conference in Monterey. I've traveled a lot. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I was in there May, and I joined this poetry reading that this group of amazing women, the Eagle Feather Fellows with the 7th Generation Fund, they put on a reading, a poetry group, and one of their prompts kind of edged onto this poem. If you could write a love letter to the land, what would you say? I'm not sure. I don't think words are enough to describe my deep appreciation for all she's done. I guess I'd ask her how she does it. How does she continue to make the trees and flowers grow or allow the sun to shine even after all that has happened to her? I'd ask her for a hug because her resiliency must be tiring. I'd ask her to smudge because when I do, I feel less heavy. And maybe if she does, the stars will sing and the stars will cry to the moon about what it's like to breathe. I'd ask her about the rocks and if she feels as strong as they. I'd ask about the pain and where it hurts the most. I'd grab my bundle of cedar and sage, and when I'm done asking, I tell her about my scars and how they still hurt too. I tell her, Tehichila napilamaya, thank you, and I love you. Okay, this one is the one that I performed at the Kennedy Center. I haven't read it since then, so bear with me. Anyway, okay. This is the story. The land remembers low rumbling, the ground crumbling, blihich iyaye. Relatives stumbling, children's laughter converts unwillingly to screams. The iron horse transferring aghast taklujas to concentration camps, you called residential schools, watching as they freeze, attempting to return home. Hold on. Kayamaka cradles our indigenous children beaten, tortured, and killed. From churches built on the rib cages of toddlers, trees weep as they burn alongside our babies. They remember observing flesh offerings for Wakatanka during Sundance transform into genocide. Dancing relatives turn into fallen warriors. They watched as buried evidence escalated. Now we excavate small bones, discover dirt-filled baby moccasins, 6,509 and rising, and you still revise our history, colonize our trauma, sculpt it into your own comfortable shape. You scream, get over it like it's your favorite song, these melodies of white supremacy, and go back to where you came from, spat into the faces of the First Nations. You plague children's minds with lies while you preach in churches praying to your whitewashed God. A facade of willing migration when really 60,000 of us died because of your Indian Removal Act, our trail of tears. I need you to know we are not your Indians. We are nations. Our blood stains the soils and rocks of the Prahasapana Mahoshicha. The trees still weep with our elders after they watched relatives brutally hang, shot in cold blood, and babies freezing in ditches from winter snow. We will never forget the Wounded Knee Massacre or Dakota 38. Our scalps, your trophies, our braids cut to disconnect our nari, a spiritual genocide. Like a skinwalker, anemic limbs and bloodthirsty desires, attempts to replicate us. You lie, manipulate your voice when you throw us in unmarked graves, bury us with your delusions and guilt. You wear our culture as if it's costume, remove clothing as easily as you discard our generational trauma. You wear our identity like a memento. Fabricate our history if it makes you sleep better. But Oglala Lakota, we are Native Americans. We are indigenous peoples. We are the First Nations. Our existence is our resistance. Thank you. That was all I had for y'all. So thank you.
Ginny.
Not today.
Is it me now?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm Virginia Town and I teach English here at OLC. That was a really powerful poem, by the way. That was extremely moving. So I was moved by that, and I think that you should submit it to anything you can submit it to. So I write basically similarly as therapy, so my poems can be quite heavy as well. The first one I'm going to read is called I Handle My Children. I handle my children as if they might disappear. Sometimes when I am holding them, my face pressed to their hair, my hands around their little fists like so many eagles cloak their nests in feathered wings, I feel their edges start to blur, as if pulled by a strong hand through a silver curtain. You can't have them, I yell at a space above their heads. They're mine. And yet I feel the weight of being gifted so many treasures that I don't deserve, that I try to earn. I handle my children as if someone might come back for them. Speaking to me sternly, they will explain, these aren't too precious, too rare for you. But I would not let them go. I would come after them. Charging like a lioness, I would come after them. Through every burning flame and every mangled wreck and sterile hospital bed, I would run to them. Dragging both legs in seeping blood and holding the heart inside my chest with my own two hands, I would crawl to them. I would die for them. I handle my children as if they might disappear, clutching their tiny bodies and all their edges, holding them in, keeping them whole. Thank you. This next one is called Wrecked, and I kind of wrote it in just observing people that are really struggling in the world with homelessness or with addictions, and how people like that might be treated. Why are so many people wrecked? I saw him escorted today from the aisle with the neon juice and microwavable beef, filled with chemicals and topped with yellow cheese, the sandwiches I mean. He was wrecked from head to toe, just demolished like the crumpled bill that fell from his coat pocket, to be trampled by a million feet, ripped apart like rotten meat in the teeth of mangy dogs, to be discarded by so many, even God? We don't allow loitering in here. We sanitize our floors and throw our garbage in the bin. We can't permit the odors that emit from spoiled milk or rotten, mottled skin. Why are so many people wrecked? I saw him escorted today, out the door and round the corner, left by that rusted dumpster that holds someone's forgotten doll, a wrecked symbol of innocence, crumpled limp against the wall. Thank you. And then I will read you one more. This one was published in South Dakota Magazine. I kind of wrote it during my experiences living on a ranch. It's called A Memory for You, My Friend. I remember how the clover was blooming, reckless and scattered in vast swaths of golden sun, bright and wild, fragrant, free. Across this pasture I remember flying, hands outstretched, rising in time to his gated steps, his rhythmic breaths, the scent of his clover-sweetened musk. I remember it was like earth and sage and rain at dusk, when you were crying in the barn, cradling his head in gentle, trembling arms. I remember how the clover was blooming at the brink of fall, reckless and scattered in thin swaths of graying tones, dying free. Thank you. That's probably all. I have a lot more, but that's what I'll share with you today, so thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Welcome.
Okay.
I think we have.
Oh, do you want to read? Wait, Bruce. Yeah. Oh,
There's
that's all right. Can you introduce yourself too?
Oops. Hi everyone, my name is Roman Vasquez. I was invited out here by Dan Sneathan. I am a writer. I've published 3 books of my own volition. One of the poems I'll be reading today is coming from my newest project, which I am currently working on getting published. Recently, I've been grappling with my identity as a male, and just knowing whether or not I deserve to call myself a male in this space, in this environment, and whether I should be here for people. When does a boy become a man? When is it that I feel like a man, or that I am worthy to say I am enough? Is it the day I have children of my own? Or is it the day hair grows on my chest? Or between my face, or between my legs, or on my face? I feel like a fool to play pretend, for you to have someone there, someone strong for you to need, yet I know nothing about what it means to be a man. Know nothing about how to grow and nourish another man, someone who needs guidance from me. Does the hair between my legs qualify me to be that guide you need? When am I worthy to be that for another? And I have 2 more. One is this next one kind of deals with mental health as well, but kind of like the passage of time when you feel like there's nothing there. There is nothing and everything flowing around my mind, passing by while silence thunders past the nothing that screams at me. Yet everything bothers me not while I remain motionless. The drag of the cigarette is my only measure of time, puff after puff and stick after stick. Only the darkness that pours into my body with each hit fills my decrepit soul. Motionless and frozen, I lie in this pool of nothing, letting the smoke fill the room to choke me to death, those smoky hands wrapping tight to rip out my heart, letting the blood drip out, letting the blood drip onto my chest and filling the cavity black, the smoke filling my soul, the only thing that can fill my decrepit soul, to make me feel whole, if only for a moment at a time. And then the last one is more, so I write a lot about intersectionality of different identities, both my identity and the identities of others around me that I see. And this one kind of encompasses my identity. It hurts to think about what could have been if I was brave. Brave enough to hold your hand. Brave enough to have told you how I felt about you. But I was afraid to show you who I really was, who I was hiding from you. Like the song Reflection says, when will my reflection show who I am? But I have always known who I was, who I am standing here today, but I was never brave enough to show you who I was, to show you what lied within. I was never brave enough to hold the hand of another man. Never brave enough to be vulnerable. To simply say, let's date, was too much. For a guy like me, afraid and meek.
I'm not going to read a poem. I'm just going to say a few words here, and it is about identity and about following your passion. when I was in high school, you know, well, there's like almost 300 kids in high school, and sports was a big thing. Either you were in sports or you were in nothing, basically. And so I got into sports. I did four years of football, though I hated almost every minute. That's back when they had steel cleats, and they sharpened them all the way down to the football field. And I played in the line, and I had marks up my arm, down the other. But I did it in order to be accepted. I was pretty good in wrestling. And Faulkton was a really big wrestling school at that time. So, you know, that's an identity. But here's the deal. That was the identity. I liked reading. I liked reading a lot. But here's the thing, in my school, you couldn't be too smart. You know, the real smart kids, there weren't a lot of them, but if you went ahead and tried to, you know, answer too many questions in a classroom or something, you got, you know, looked down upon. So I got used to pacing myself because I did want to get fairly good grades. So I'd answer a couple questions. So I limited myself to each classroom. But in my senior year, it just hit me how dumb it was. Dumb. That, you know, I can be more than one person. So I liked reading. I liked sports. Well, I went on into college, and reading was what took me through college. And I got a degree. But when I got to my degree, it hit me. You know, I was going to spend the rest of my life behind a desk. And I thought to myself, what was it that I really liked? I liked cattle. I liked cows. So I had a degree, didn't even apply for a job. I had a master's. I turned around and went back to the farm and ranch. And I can't really say I ever regretted that because I love being out in the open. I love working with cattle. And then later on in my life, I had got a couple sons, and they wanted to go out for wrestling. So I ended up, I've done 30 years coaching youth wrestling and high school wrestling. And this is the same speech I've given to many, many high school wrestlers. I look at them and I said, you can be more than one person. Follow your passion. When I say find a road and follow the moonshine, that's what I mean. Find your passion. And then a little bit later in my life, when I started writing, I found the South Dakota State Poetry Society, and that became a passion. So those have been my passions in my life. I still am I'm a licensed or whatever coach in 2 different states. I got grandkids up in North Dakota. I still walk into the wrestling room. Love poetry, love hearing people do that. And, you know, it's like if you belong in one group, it's like you cannot belong to another group. But that's not true. If you have a passion for something, go ahead and learn everything you could possibly find about it. Be with those people. Being around those people is what makes you. I learned a lot. I learned a lot today listening to the poetry in this room, and it's great. So that's what I got to say. If you're talking to your kids, or doesn't matter what age. I didn't start writing seriously until my early 50s. So here I am now. So yes, you can become the next poet laureate in South Dakota. You just hang in there and be all that you can be. So that's what I got to say. Thank you.
We have time for questions, if you have questions you want to ask, or go eat some food. I really just want to thank everybody who had the courage to come up here and read, because it does take courage to get up here, especially with all this Zoom business going on. So I want to thank you all for reading. I hope that all of you who read, all of you who are writing in secret at home will submit poems to Pass Petals and the contest that the South Dakota State Poetry Society has.